Today, we're going to be dissecting this episode called From Seed to Seedling, the first steps in growing cannabis,
Okay.
from this podcast called Weed with Steve.
All right.
Now, before you click that next button and think, wait, I thought this show was for learning about everything but tea-growing weed, I promise this is super fascinating, even if you've never touched a cannabis plant.
Right.
Trust me.
It's kind of like,
It's really applicable to all sorts of stuff.
yeah, peeking behind the curtain of nature's magic show and uncovering some universal truths about plant life in general.
Exactly. So Steve, the host of that show, he kicks things off talking about seed selection, and he drops this knowledge bomb right away. He's like, not all seeds are created equal.
Right.
And think, okay, duh, some are bigger, some are smaller.
Sure.
But it turns out with cannabis, there's way more to it than that.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So there are different types of cannabis seeds. He breaks it down to regular, feminized, and auto-flowering.
Okay.
Now, regular seeds, they're like a genetic lottery. You get a 50-50 chance of getting a male or female plant.
Okay.
But the real game changer here are feminized seeds.
Hold on. Feminized seeds. So I can guarantee all my plants are going to produce those, potent buds.
Yes.
Really?
You can guarantee all female plants.
So that's kind of like a shortcut, right, for growers?
It is, but like all shortcuts, there are trade-offs.
Okay.
You sacrifice a little genetic diversity,
Oh, okay.
which can impact the plant's resilience to pests or disease.
Oh, so it's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what about those auto-flowering seeds? The name kind of sounds self-explanatory, but I bet there's more to it.
You got it. So, auto-flowering strains have been bred to flower based on age,
Oh, interesting.
not light cycles.
Okay.
This means they'll start producing buds regardless of how many hours of light they get.
Mm.
Huge advantage for growers with maybe in certain climates or with limited space.
Okay. So we've got our seeds. We kind of know what we're getting into. Time to wake them up and get them sprouting, right?
Exactly. That's the next step. Skeeve covers two main germination methods, paper towel and direct soil.
Okay.
Now, these both hinge on providing those ideal kind of spa-like conditions for the seed. Moisture, darkness, and warmth.
So, I'm picturing tiny seeds wrapped in fluffy towels, cucumber slices on their eyes.
Right, exactly.
Maybe not that fancy. So with the paper towel method, you're basically creating that humid environment, and Steve says you can actually see the taproot emerge, that first little root that shoots out.
Yes.
That must be so cool to see.
It's pretty fascinating.
Tiny sign of life.
Yeah.
Kind of mind-blowing.
Right.
And what about the direct soil method?
Direct soil, you're placing the seed straight into its growing medium, skipping that paper towel step.
Nice.
So it's like you're giving the seedling a head start in its forever home and minimizing that potential root disturbance when you do eventually transplant it.
So both methods have their pros and cons, but isn't there a risk of damaging that delicate little taproot if you're moving it from a paper towel to soil?
Yeah. That's why some growers prefer just starting with the direct soil method.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
But both methods work well if you're careful.
All right. So we've got our seeds, we've got them germinating. Now what?
Now it's time to think about transplanting that fragile seedling. This is where things get a little more technical.
Okay. I'm all ears.
especially if you're aiming for those potent buds.
Okay.
Just any old potting soil from the grocery store won't cut it.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting. So this is where even seasoned plant parents start to get into new territory.
Yeah. So cannabis, especially certain strains, can be a bit picky about their soil. They prefer a light, well-draining mix that's rich in nutrients, but not too dense. Think of it like a gourmet meal for your plant.
Interesting. There's probably a whole, science to creating the perfect cannabis soil blend, huh?
There is. We could do a whole nother deep dive on just that.
Oh, wow. Maybe we should.
But for now, just know that providing the right nutrients and the right soil structure is crucial for those potent buds.
Okay, cool. Makes sense. It's like building a strong foundation for a house.
Yeah.
Now, what about light? I know cannabis plants love sunshine.
Yes.
But how much is too much for these delicate little seedlings?
Right. Well, light is essential, but too much direct sunlight can actually scorch those fragile leaves.
Right.
It's like giving a baby a sunburn.
Oh, okay.
So the key is to provide gentle, indirect light at first. Gradually increase the intensity as that seedling grows stronger.
So mimicking nature, basically.
Exactly.
Like where a seedling might sprout naturally, like maybe sheltered under taller plants or something.
Right. And this applies even if you're growing indoors under lights.
Oh, okay.
You got to find that sweet spot where the seedling is getting enough energy to photosynthesize and grow,
Mm-hmm.
but not so much that it gets overwhelmed.
So we've got our soil, we've got our light. What
Hmm.
about water? I feel like this is where a lot of new plant parents, myself included, get tripped up.
Absolutely. It's a common mistake. Overwatering can be fatal for seedlings.
Oh, really?
Remember, those roots are still developing. They need air as much as they need water.
Okay. So again, we're back to that balance, huh?
Exactly.
Not too much, not too little.
Yeah. A good rule of thumb is to let the top inch or two of soil dry out before you water again. You want moist, not soggy.
Got it. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's all about observation and finding that Goldilocks zone for everything.
Precisely.
Okay.
That's where the real art of cultivation comes in.
Yeah, cool.
It's about being attuned to your plant's needs, recognizing those subtle cues, and adjusting your care accordingly.
So in a way, it's like learning a new language, huh? The language of plants.
I love that. Yes.
That's a good analogy. And the more fluent you become, the better you'll be at, nurturing their growth.
Absolutely.
So we talked about choosing the seed, getting it to sprout, picking the perfect soil, finding that Goldilocks zone for the light and water. But what happens when things go wrong? What about those moments when our seedlings are speaking to us, but we're not quite sure what they're saying?
Don't worry, that's what we'll talk about in the next part of this deep dive. We'll tackle those common seedling problems and Steve's tips for troubleshooting them. Stay tuned, let's be real. Even with the best intentions and all the right knowledge, things can still go wrong. Seedlings are delicate, and sometimes they throw us curveballs.
Totally. They have like a whole secret language we're still trying to decipher. But luckily, Steve's got our backs with a whole section on troubleshooting common seedling issues. And I appreciate that he focuses on the underlying causes, not just like quick fixes. It's like he's teaching us to be plant detectives.
Right, not about blindly following a recipe, but understanding the why behind the solution. So let's start with a common cry for help. Yellowing leaves. It can be a real head scratcher because it could point to several different problems.
Yeah, it's like when you're trying to figure out why your Wi-Fi is down. Is it the router? Is it the modem? Is it the internet provider? So with yellowing leaves, what are the usual suspects?
Steve mentions the classic trio: overwatering, underwatering, and nutrient deficiencies. Each one has telltale signs, if you know what to look for.
Okay, so let's break it down. Say my seedlings' leaves are starting to yellow and the soil is bone dry. I'm guessing that's a pretty clear sign of underwatering.
Most likely, it's like the plant's just saying, hey, I'm parched over here. A little H2O would be much appreciated.
Yeah.
But on flip side, if the soil is soggy and the leaves are yellowing, you might be drowning the roots.
Yikes. That's a good reminder to check the soil before you grab the watering can. And what about nutrient deficiencies? What does that look like?
This one can be trickier. Yellowing leaves, especially older ones, can signal a lack of essential nutrients like nitrogen, magnesium, or iron. And it's not always about how much you're feeding the plant. Sometimes it's about the pH of the soil, which affects how readily those nutrients are absorbed.
Whoa, so it's like a whole ecosystem down there. The soil, the nutrients, the water.
Yeah.
It's got to be in balance. Okay, so we've covered yellowing leaves. What's another common seedling SOS?
Well, we talked about those leggy seedlings, the ones that look like they're stretching for a lifeline. That's usually a desperate cry for more light.
Yeah, they're basically doing the plant equivalent of waving their arms and shouting, "Over here! Need some sunshine!"
Exactly. And it's a common issue, especially for indoor growers or those starting seedlings early in the season when daylight hours are short. The solution is often as simple as moving the plant closer to a light source or adding supplemental lighting.
But sometimes it's not just about the amount of light, right? I remember reading that the type of light matters too, especially for cannabis.
You're right, cannabis thrives under specific light spectrums, particularly during different growth stages for seedlings. A blue heavy spectrum mimics that spring sunshine, encouraging strong root development and healthy leaf growth.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just about blasting them with any old light bulb. It's about providing the right kind of light for the job. It's like you wouldn't use a hairdryer to bake a cake, right?
Perfect analogy. The right tools for the right task. Now let's move on to another challenge that can pop up, especially in those humid, cozy seedling nurseries we create: fungal growth or mold.
That doesn't sound good. I'm picturing those fuzzy white spots you sometimes see on old bread.
Yeah, it's not pretty, and it can be a real threat to those delicate seedlings. Mold thrives in warm, damp environments, which unfortunately are also ideal for germination and early growth.
It's like we're creating a five-star hotel for both our seedlings and the mold. So how do we prevent these uninvited guests from crashing the party?
Air circulation is key. Steve emphasizes that good airflow helps to prevent moisture from building up and creating that perfect breeding ground for mold. Think fans ventilation, even just a gentle breeze if you're growing outdoors.
Got it. It's like airing out a room after a shower. And what if we spot mold despite our best efforts? Is it game over for our seedlings?
Not necessarily. If you catch it early, you can carefully remove the affected areas and improve ventilation. There are also some natural antifungal sprays you can use, but prevention is always the best medicine.
All right, so we've got yellowing leaves, leggy seedlings, and mold. Are there any other seedling shenanigans we should be on the lookout for?
Steve covers a few more, like damping off, which is a fungal disease that can cause seedlings to wilt and collapse, and pests, which can be a real nuisance even for young plants. But the good news is that most of these problems can be avoided or managed with proper care and attention.
It all comes back to that plant detective work, right? Paying attention, noticing the subtle cues, and knowing what to do. I have to say, this is way more involved than I ever imagined.
It is, but that's part of the beauty of it, right? There's always something new to learn. And the more you understand, the more rewarding the journey becomes.
I'm starting to see why Steve is so passionate about this. It's not just about growing a plant, it's about understanding the intricate web of life that supports it.
Exactly. It's a microcosm of the natural world, and
Yeah.
the lessons we learn here can be applied to so many other areas of life.
We've covered those tricky seedling situations. Where do we go from here?
Well, before we wrap up, let's zoom out and connect this back to Steve's original question about the parallels between nurturing a seedling and fostering growth in other areas of life.
That's a great transition. I think we've touched on this throughout our deep dive, but it's worth exploring further. What are some of those key takeaways our listener can apply to their own lives?
Yeah, it's amazing how much we can learn from like just one episode of Weed with Steve. I started this thinking, okay, cannabis, interesting,
Mm-hmm.
but not really my thing. But man, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the magic of plant life in general.
Yeah.
There's something so humbling and inspiring about witnessing that tiny seed transform into a thriving plant, you know?
Yeah.
And the parallels to our own lives, our own journeys of growth are undeniable.
Absolutely. So let's unpack that a bit. We've talked about providing the right environment for a seedling nourishment support.
Right.
How do those same principles translate to, say, personal growth or pursuing a goal?
Well, think about the environment you create for yourself.
Okay.
Are you surrounding yourself with things that nurture your growth? Or are you constantly bombarded with negativity and self-doubt?
Right, right.
It's just like a seedling needs the right amount of light and water. We need the right kind of mental and emotional nourishment to thrive.
That makes sense. So it's about being mindful of those inputs, right?
Yes.
The books we read, the people we spend time with,
Exactly.
the information we consume, it all shapes our internal environment.
Yes, and just like we provide nutrients to a seedling, we need to nourish ourselves with knowledge, experiences, and connections that, fuel our passions and support our goals.
Yeah. And I'm guessing support is just as crucial for us as it is for a seedling.
Absolutely. Think of the support structure we provide for a seedling, like a sturdy stake, a trellis, even just the right kind of soil to anchor its roots.
Right.
We need that kind of support in our lives too,
Yeah.
from friends, family, mentors, even therapists, people who can help us stay upright when those winds of change are blowing strong.
Yeah, I'm seeing the connections here. It's like we're all seedlings in a way, constantly growing, evolving, reaching for our full potential.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And just like a seedling needs time and patience to mature, we need to be gentle with ourselves, trust the process, and celebrate those small victories along the way.
Oh man, that is a great reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to appreciate the journey.
It is, and just like a seedling can be vulnerable to pests and diseases,
Right.
we can encounter obstacles and setbacks that threaten our growth.
Yeah.
But remember, even when things get tough, even when we feel like we're wilting, there's always a potential for resilience and renewal.
That's such a powerful message. Even if a seedling gets knocked down by a storm or something, it can still find a way to grow back stronger.
Exactly, and I think that's the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive,
Yeah.
Whether you're a seasoned gardener, a curious beginner, or someone who's never even thought about growing a plant, the journey from seed to seedling offers profound lessons about life, growth, and the interconnectedness of all living things.
It's a reminder that nature holds the blueprint for success, a roadmap for thriving, if we're willing to pay attention and learn from its wisdom.
And that wisdom is available to all of us, regardless of our background or our interest in cannabis. The journey from seed to seedling is a universal story of growth, resilience, and the interconnectedness of life.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with this thought. Take a moment to reflect on your own life, your own journey of growth. What conditions are you creating for yourself to thrive? What nourishment are you providing? What support are you seeking? What are your light and water sources? And what are you doing to protect yourself from the pests and diseases that might hinder your growth? These are powerful questions to ponder, and the answers might surprise you. And remember, just like a seedling needs time, patience, and the right environment to thrive, so do we. Be gentle with yourself, nurture your growth, and watch as you blossom into the best version of yourself. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of cannabis cultivation. We'll catch you next time.